Our board president is with me today. And we're revisiting our previous proposal to you back in April, where the Platte River Trails Trust requested the county's sponsorship of a TAP grant to build a bridge from the Casper Rail Trail into Edna's Kimball Wilkins State Park. Since that time, we had a site visit with YDOT, and it was their recommendation that we proceed with requesting funds for a design on the bridge rather than construction of the bridge. We were given permission to proceed with an application, and so we are requesting the county to sponsor. We're requesting the county to sponsor that TAP grant application in the amount of $200,000, which was also their recommendation is of around 20% of the overall estimated cost of the project. We would continue to work with Roads and Bridges. We've been in contact with Mike Hagler and his department all along the way on the details and would require their assistance going forward as the application requires a sponsor and also an LPA certified individual, which they have 2 on staff.
Question, Mr. Chairman, I just need some recollection.
I think Commissioner North had his light on first.
Okay,
We let
yeah,
him
no problem.
ask.
No problem.
Go
Raise
first.
my
He's
hand
got a
first.
faster draw.
Thank you.
I do have a question, and it's more of a concern than anything else. So if this is built, who's going to be responsible for it?
So YDOT indicated that they would include it in their inspections. So as far as inspections, in terms of maintenance, that is an issue that would need to be resolved.
That's a big issue.
It
That's
is.
a very, very big issue. And that's something that I have concerns about as far as some of the other trails that we have, is that, yeah, they do justice, they do a lot of good for the public, but who's going to be responsible for the long-term maintenance of that? And especially with something like this isn't something that's, you can just go out and patch the asphalt. You know, it's, there's a lot to be concerned about as far as that goes. And that's where I have a lot of concern, is just basically who that long-term maintenance is going to be under. If it's going to be under YDOT, fine. But I'm pretty sure they're going to say, no, it's not our bridge. And if it comes back on the county for maintenance and upkeep, I've got some real issues with it, because that's a budget breaker all the way around if that happens, if anything happens to it. So I just wanted to ask that, because if you don't know who it is right now, that raises a few red flags for me. So.
Any thoughts in response?
Yes, so this initial application is strictly for design. If we were awarded the grant to go ahead and pursue design, we would do that, but of course, we would have to reapproach the commissioners for permission to apply for funds to actually construct the bridge, and I doubt that would be possible without the county's support. And so at that time, I would hope we could take the opportunity to discuss that and find a mutual resolution to your concerns before proceeding.
Commissioner Laird?
So to sponsor you on the grant, does that cost us any money?
It does not. There's no out-of-pocket funds. It would require some time on the part of the staff of Roads and Bridges in terms of the application and follow-up paperwork that's required for that grant. I could not estimate the number of hours that requires, but Mike Hagler indicated that he's familiar with them and has worked alongside Platte River Trails Trust on several projects like that, and might be a great resource for knowing what that actually requires.
Do you have an estimated cost in mind? Just an estimated cost?
For the bridge project completely?
Yes.
We're estimating $1 million.
And do you think you're going to be asking the county for that amount of money?
Not the county, but YDOT through the Transportation Alternatives Program.
And when do you think all this may take place?
Go ahead.
Do you want to address the?
No, go ahead.
Okay. And as we indicated last time, there are matching funds that are required through TAP grants. I'm sorry.
If you don't, the people that are
Yeah,
watching can't.
absolutely. Nat Steinhoff. There are matching funds that were required, but as we indicated last time, as a part of asking for your support previously, which we would have to come to you again to actually ask for your support to apply for TAP funds again to actually construct it, depending on what we find in the engineering and design work, we would guarantee to the county that we're not going to come back to you to ask for any portion of those matching funds to get the million-ish dollars from the TAP grant. And then I don't know if you want to address the timeline.
No, excellent point. So just to add to what Nat said, that match is just under 10%, and we would be responsible for that. And then, are you asking for timeline for construction or timeline for?
Just generally.
Well, if we are successful in this application, we would not really see design work on those funds start until maybe December or January at the earliest. And then we would have the opportunity to apply again in July for the actual construction of the bridge, which probably means 2026 during the construction season would be as early as the bridge would be installed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Friel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm assuming this overpass is going to be something similar to what's at Wyoming Boulevard and up by Berta James. Something similar to that?
We don't anticipate it being as complex as that or necessarily all the same materials. What I know is that in the MPO study in 21, where that recommendation was made to proceed with the project, construction, early ideas, I guess, pointed more toward the bridges that we've done spanning the river, along the river trail. Those look a little more rudimentary than, I would say, the construct over at Verda. But I don't know until we get this engineering and design work done, what exactly they'll recommend. 140-foot span was in the original design. I'm not an engineer, obviously, so I don't know what's required, but it will be a pedestrian only, so it'll be made for bikes and walkers only. And YDOT did hint at the site visit that there would be some requirements in terms of barriers on the sides to prevent people from throwing things or going over the sides of the bridge. Other than that, I'm not exactly sure what engineers will come up with.
So where I was really kind of going with that, and I'm glad you brought up the other bridges, or if you look at the underpass on Beverly Street, or the underpass at 13th and Wyoming Boulevard, I think there's plenty that we can choose from, that we could certainly find out who maintains those and what that relationship is in the very end. Because I can tell you that I don't think the city, nor do I think the county, has to do any maintenance on any of that stuff at all. So I think the answer to the commissioner's question could be simply asked by, whichever jurisdiction any of those fall into.
So my feeling is that this isn't going to cost the county anything at this point. We'll have another bite at the apple at such time as the engineers finished with the design that you guys approve. At such time as, you've had conversations with YDOT, at such time as you'll be able to present to us not only estimated cost of construction, but also estimated cost of repair and maintenance over a long period. I agree with Commissioner Friel that I'm not aware of much in terms of maintenance on these bridges. There's one at North Casper, soccer complex. There are a couple, I think. I know there are at least two over in the
There's one near the pump house.
the pump house.
and
Yeah, there's
another
one
in
there, and
Jordan
then there's
Hills.
one just upriver. The golf course is all I could think of, Three Crowns. But in any event, I would hope that you give a preference where appropriate to local engineers and contractors. I would expect that you'll give a preference to something that's not only aesthetically pleasing, but maybe even a stronger preference towards something that's low maintenance. I know, I believe it was YDOT, not the city, I'm not sure, but they expended quite a bit of time and energy, and I assume money on that Verta James concrete structure, in part because it's concrete. And like you said, it's a much more complex thing. I know with the grades involved on the outside the right-of-way, that the hope is that there's less dirt work and plenty of clearance for vehicular traffic and all that. You say it's 140 feet. I see that in this draft application. Or it's a statement of intent. Yeah. Is that a 140-foot bridge, or is that 140 foot including the approaches?
I believe that's the bridge, but I'd have to clarify
Okay.
later.
Well, in any event, I didn't have any other questions or concerns, but I suppose kind of to one of the earlier questions, maybe it was Commissioner Laird's, on the timeframe. When do you expect to be back in front of us? Next summer? 3 years? I mean, you've got to have some idea.
Sure. So if we are successful, if you give us the opportunity and sponsor the grant for this go round, we will complete the application by the 15th of this month. That's when that's due. And we should hear by November whether we've been awarded, in which case we would move forward in putting together another grant application by July of 2025. So that would be, we would be approaching you maybe 3 months prior to that, knowing that we were able to go forward with something feasible. And we would, if I may add one more comment, of course, like all the projects that we do, have an eye toward longevity, and appreciate very much your comments about low maintenance and ensuring that it's a good product.
Yeah, I think that's in the trust's best interest too. All right, any other questions, Commissioner Laird?
No?
Okay. Anything else you'd like us to know?
No, thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
you're welcome. Thanks for coming here today. I think we do have this in the packet for approval tonight, and I don't see Michelle here. With the July 15th deadline, I would think that we'd have something in our packet, and maybe I can pull it up here on my computer.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add a comment in, I'll get with the city and find out with the bridges that they deal with or the underpasses itself, who's responsible and to what extent. And then I'll get that back to you. That way you don't have to dig through it. I mean, we can get the answer pretty quick.
Thank you. You know, I'm not seeing it in our consent agenda.
I didn't see it at all when I
So,
looked.
so what documentation do you need from the commission, for the commission to consider to meet your July 15th deadline?
Just an approval of resolution to sponsor.
You have a form of resolution or is an oral?
The memo was all I provided. Do you have a suggestion?
We'd be
sorry.
happy to provide to the extent that it's possible in the timeline that you need for tonight. We recognize that both last time and this time we're coming to you under the gun, which we appreciate your graciousness on. And so if we need to provide something else, we can certainly clear our calendars to provide you what you need if it's still possible for us to do that inside the timeline that you have.
Well, if we're going to meet, that's the only way to meet your July 15th deadline. I mean, we do have a meeting on Monday, July 15th, but that's probably past the, 11th hour. I would suggest that maybe somebody devote some time to this afternoon to preparing something, and you can work with Michelle, our administrative assistant, and we'll make sure that our legal department is okay with it. So the sooner you get it to us, the better. And then I believe we can consider it tonight. We'll see if we want to have it as part of the consent agenda or whether we have it as a separate item. But I think that's it. So I think you better go get to work.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next appointment is with our Deputy County Attorney, Lita Hoyman. And am I pronouncing your name?
Yes,
Because I've not been
that's
pronouncing it
okay.
correctly, and I apologize. Resolution 40-24 to establish uniform procedures, costs, and charges for inspecting, copying, producing public records pursuant to the Public Records Act. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. So this resolution is part of a bigger project we have going on in the county attorney's office. So one portion would be this resolution that counties are required to have, or something similar, required to have in order, if we would ever want to charge for a public records request. And so what I did was I looked at the cities, the city of Douglas, the county of Albany, and then the state's policies. And they're pretty much all the same because they follow the statutory language. I did, throw in maybe different numbers to try to make it easier to understand. But specifically, the Public Records Act for the uniform charges talks about electronic versus non-electronic documents, and under each of those headings, there's inspection versus copying. So again, we're not required to charge, but if we do charge, I think it's prudent to have this. The second resolution or policy, which we're not done with yet, would be our internal policies for how you process them, who's the public records person. Part of the delay in that is we are getting a new electronic system, so I don't want to write a resolution or policy and then have to come back and amend it in a couple months. So that's a different portion. But this one is simply setting, for example, timelines and for inspection, I put in a 20-day time period. If the applicant has not, come to inspect the records, then we close the matter. Then the cost, I think pretty much every resolution I read had these costs in there. So just trying to simplify it.
Anything else you'd like to present before we start asking a few questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioners, questions?
I have one.
Commissioner Laird?
Yes.
Did you compare when I looked at the costs of these that you have, I've always wondered if these are in line with Wyoming. Because it sounds to me like some of these could be fairly expensive for somebody if they had to get somebody in IT to go look something up and have to pay them $50 an hour or whatever that was.
Yes, so for example, Commissioner Laird, with respect to the actual cost of programming or the programming and computer services, it would be the actual cost. A map, the big maps that the mapping individuals make, actual cost. There was no, and we can put a cost in, this is not the end all be all, but my numbers for costs are similar to everybody else's that I reviewed, either the cities, our city of Casper, city of Douglas, county of Albany, and the states. But you all are free to charge less, charge more. Some of the resolutions and policies I reviewed were, to me, super complicated. For example, you had to figure the cost of every public records request, and then if it was over 500, that public records request took secondary priority it was just confusing. So I took that out, but you can essentially, as long as we follow the statute, put in any little quirky thing you might want.
Let me,
I had an example I wanted to ask about. Let's say somebody comes in and they just want one page of something. And an IT person has to look it up, takes them an hour and a half. Does that mean that that person's gonna have to pay $75 to get that?
It's not mandatory.
Is that the way yours reads?
Well, so for programming and computer services, it's the actual cost for $34 an hour for information technology on the production and construction for inspection. And
Well, here's where I'm confused. So pretend like I'm a lawyer and I want to get the documents that I need for a certain case from the county. And so I make a request, and for some reason Eileen has to go look it up, and it takes her an hour and a half. Am I going to be given a bill for $75 or $100 to get that one page?
no, because I had put in there something similar to all the other resolutions. There will be no charge for the first 1 hour. But if it cost an hour and a half, or if it was an hour and a half, then for half an hour, 12, whatever half of 34 is.
We don't charge anyway, do we? I mean, these people are all on our payroll and they're paid and all of that, so that it's not like you're going to Atlas Reproduction and having them do it.
Right, and there is a provision to account for if an outside vendor has to for some reason, but you are correct. Since I've been here and Michelle and I have, I would say, processed the majority of these public records requests, I have never charged and neither has Michelle. But I don't know that we, let's say someone wants 50 of the big, huge maps. That's actual cost. I don't know what a cost of that big map would be, but I do believe that we are very reasonable. And let's be honest, if you look at, it's 10 cents per page. Well, by the time we do billing and get it back, we wasted more money, not wasted. We've utilized more money and time than it would be to get the 10 cents.
But I would see somebody wouldn't want you to have to print out a big map. They'd get a printout. If they wanted it expanded, they'd go to Atlas Reproduction and do it, pay them for it.
Sure, and this tries to account for all scenarios, which it never can. If there's a unique format, say film for some reason, that's actual cost.
So,
One last comment.
Yes.
The only thing you have to be aware of is that if you are charging too much, people get too big of a bill, then they're saying you're really, it's a subterfuge to keep them from getting the requested information. So I just don't want to have to face that issue ever.
I would agree. Another example would be, let's say somebody requested, I don't know, every single BOE hearing file. That's something that we could, under the reasonableness standard, say, sure, you can come and inspect that. And if you want to make copies, I don't know, bring your own copy machine. I don't know, we have to make sure of confidentiality. But my point is that would be a huge project, right? For someone to dig out all the BOE files or print them off or find them. I have not received one of those requests yet since I've been here, but that doesn't mean we won't receive one.
so my, some of my thoughts are that there are organizations out there on both sides of the political spectrum that are in the business of sending onerous public records requests to government, all levels of government. I'm amazed that we, knock on wood, have apparently not received any of those yet. I think it's not if, it's when. And I'll tell you that those companies are absolutely sophisticated enough to pitch a fit, meaning say no thank you when you try to assess a charge or a fee without an established policy. So I think we do need them, because while these folks employed by Natrona County are on salary, they have, in many instances, it's not their daily job activity, and it's a burden on them, and it slows the county down in other respects, whether it's you or Michelle or anybody else trying to respond. That's taking away from the time that you or she or they could be spending on projects that might be of urgency to this commission or to other departments in the county. So I think this is a good idea. I think, frankly, 10 cents per page for a black and white copy is, I think it's pretty far under market, because I used to have a copying contract, or I've had multiple contracts with copying services that, and it's typically 20 or, anyway, it can be a lot more. I'm a little concerned about what discretion we have or don't have when we assess these things, because you're first on page 2 under electronic public records, paragraph 1A, it says under Wyoming statute, a custodian shall charge the reasonable costs of producing. And so I think that if that's the mandatory statutory, if the mandate is in the statutory language, then we need to have a policy. I mean, I just don't know, Lita, if we have enough flexibility under either the statute or our policy. And so maybe you can point that out to me, because I don't want to be charging every member or citizen of our county for 2 or 5 pages necessarily.
Yes, and I did notice that, and in fact, there's contradictory in some places, depending, or not, in some areas of the statute, depending on what records you're looking for. It says shall, in other places it says may. So you are correct on that.
So, I don't know if the other commissioners have follow-up on that or in other areas, but we want some consistency, and I think we want to find the right balance so that if it's some company in Washington DC that's trying to harass us, which we know is happening in the state of Wyoming, versus, Grandma Jean, and she's, got 5 copies that, because she's trying to get a deed, that for the house that she's owned for 30 years. So I think we may need to just make sure we're in good shape in that respect. Commissioner Milne.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. We want to keep this at least arbitrary as possible.
Yes.
If that means charging everybody for everything, that's one thing. But we need to have good guidelines of if we are going to make exceptions, how do they apply and where do they apply? Currently, Michelle charges $10 or so for data disks. If you go down to records and have copies of warranty deeds and different things done, you pay there, you pay here and there everywhere. So it's not like it's going to be a surprise that you're having to pay to receive records.
That is correct.
I see that our clerk turned on her microphone. Madam Clerk, do you have thoughts on this? Because we don't want to screw up what's going on and what's, the smooth operation of your office and of other county departments.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So the clerk's office has a specific fee schedule pursuant to 183402. However, in addition to that fee set forth in statute, we do have photocopy fees, which are 25 cents a page, and then certification, so certifying documents as certified copies coming out of my office, there's a fee for those. And I have a fee schedule that's also on our website. So I don't know how this would correlate with this proposal, other than the fact that we're talking about public records requests versus documents, coming out of my office, which in turn could kind of mean the same thing.
Sure.
Well, and with respect to this public record statute, the payment, I wouldn't say it's complicated, the statutory requirement, but in some cases, the custodian has to give an estimate, and then they take prepayment, and then if they don't use all of it, then they have to give a refund. That's fine if that's what we need to do. That's a lot of work for, say, 50 cents, but if that's what we need to do, that's fine as well. And I think something that will help this policy once we get the second resolution or policy about public records and everyone in the county is hopefully on the same page, that might take care of, say, Tracy's office and her fee schedule, or maybe the assessor has one. I don't know.
Is there anything in this proposed resolution in front of us that identifies that there may be charges, other charges for non-FOIA or non-Public Records Act requests that other departments may charge, and that those are separate and distinct from anything in this? We might want to just, out of an abundance of caution, and make sure that everything is abundantly clear. Commissioner Laird.
I'd like to see something in there that's maybe arbitrary, probably is, but I'd like to see that if a Natrona County resident comes in here and they want a couple pages copied, they don't have to pay for anything. Up to 5 or 10 pages, I think we should give our residents, it's just like a fishing license, you charge a little more to out-of-state people than you do your own people. But in this situation, as Mr. Nicolais says, some lady wants to see her deed from 50 years ago, and I think she ought to get it free myself. That's
Mr.
just my
Chairman.
thought.
Commissioner Laird, we don't typically charge for copies. It's a fee
I
schedule
know-
put
I
on the
know you don't.
website, but typically we don't charge.
Yeah,
Unless
I
it's a
know
certification.
you're very kind, and what
thank
I'd
you.
like to do though is have something where somebody comes in and it might be 5 pages or 10 pages and they're a Natrona County resident. They pay the taxes here. They ought to get a little benefit every now and then. That's my own belief.
And with respect to large requests, I believe the last large request you all received, and you all can probably correct me, would be someone did request, I don't know what type of information regarding all the BOE hearings. And that's why Michelle had changed to a spreadsheet and certain changes were made. And I guess that was quite the request with all the records between my office and your all's office. And I don't know if anyone was charged for that, but I know that that I'm aware of was the last big one.
So, and I'll ask the commission, but I'm wondering how to proceed. My thinking is that we're getting close, but I'm not sure we're exactly as dialed in on this particular draft as maybe I am comfortable with. I assume you have run this by IT, and I don't know if there's a need to or not, frankly, but typically, you know, IT might have some consideration, some thoughts on whether it's the time expended or the technical issues with the digital and electronic response stuff.
And with respect to, okay, so IT in this particular draft and statutorily is specifically, they are specifically defined and have their own charges as far as asking them. I have not run this by them, of course, with the other internal policy, because we're getting a brand new system to not only, I mean, we don't, our electronic system, they are involved in that, but I could ask them if they
You
have
might
any
just say if
thoughts
they
on
have
this.
any comment on it, and I think that we ought to probably give our clerk time to comment on it too, just if she hasn't already, just to make sure we're not having conflicts, and, you know, if there's some staff, a reminder, you know, hey, this is FOIA, this is not, you know, I don't know. Commission, are we, Commissioner North?
I know there's separation in there, and I do agree with what Commissioner Laird said. You know, for citizens, it's just like if you're a citizen of Casper and you're paying a water bill, you take it up to the dump and you get to go in free. You know, I don't know how we'd set that up for residents of the county, but I do think that there is something that we need to do, you know, so that they don't get charged on all of it. I think that we're moving in the right direction on this. I do agree. And especially if we have somebody, because I was involved in a situation where we had somebody come in and request thousands of pages of documentation, and that's a little different story. There needs to be, you know, that's going to take a lot of time. That's going to take a lot of effort. And that is something that, I mean, you have to pretty much dedicate individuals to doing that, and that cost needs to be absorbed by the individual that's requesting it. I don't know where we draw the line.
I know you have a de minimis charge for time, no charge for the first 1 hour. You might,
That was just random.
yeah, no, and that sounds fine. I think part of what we're doing here is providing a public service to the public. I'm not even sure about our ability legally to afford a preference to county residents. I think we want to be we just want to make sure we're okay on that. So I'm not really in favor of that personally. But I think we either need discretion in copies of electronic public records, this is on page 3, or some sort of de minimis number of copies, you know, if it's 5 or fewer, or if it's 10 or fewer, black and white, 8.5 by 11. I don't know. That's a little more detail than I need to get into right now, but any other comments?
Just one, and I don't know if it's been made yet, but I think that there should be something in there. If they want what is going to be hundreds or thousands of copies, they should pay up front.
I think that is in here.
Is that in
I
there?
know
That's
it is.
statutorily, it talks about paying up front.
It's in
Well,
this-
we give the applicant an estimate, then they pay us the estimate, and then if there's a
Okay.
refund due, then we need to pay clearly the applicant back.
I was a victim of this once, a few years ago. Somehow they did something to my fax machine. You couldn't turn it off. I finally just had to unplug it and get a new one because it kept printing all this crap out that they were sending me.
All right. I think we've given you a little bit of discretion or direction, I'm sorry, direction, and maybe in a couple weeks we'll have another draft in front of us.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very
And one
much.
more comment, I guess, I don't think, well, the records that say the clerk is talking about, of course, are subject to the Public Records Act, but I don't know that we want everyone to have to put in a request when they come in for one sheet of paper of a deed or,
I agree.
Not doing it.
Yeah.
well, and so that kind of interplays again with the other policy we'll work on.
Well, when do we say Public Records Act?
I don't know.
Sorry, sucker. Public Records Act. No, I mean, you understand how we can
Yes.
be courteous and yeah, it's no problem to give you a copy of a deed downstairs. But should that be part of our policy, or at least should we say we reserve the right to, that we have the discretion to determine what is FOIA? And I'm sure there's got to be some case law on that for statutory guidance.
Well,
Anyway.
and if we want everything tracked or not, and again, that's, I also over here on this policy. That's invisible right now.
Well, thank you for
Thank you.
your time and energy on this, Lita. Our next appointment is with Heather Duncan Malone, our county attorney. Purpose is the dissolution of the Wardwell and the update on Blair Lane Improvement Service District.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Holscher's here on behalf of the town of Bar None, and then we can, the attorney for the district for Wardwell is available by phone if we can give her a call and get her on the line.
And her name is,
Aaliyah Scott?
very good, and we saw the letters in our file.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I also ask Chairman Bertolio, he's the head of regional, he's the chairman of regional, come in, so if there's any questions we have, that he can clarify those from regional standpoint also.
Yep, Regional Water, and welcome, gentlemen. Mr. Holscher, if you'd like to come up, and I suppose you can start, or our county attorney can, lay the table.
Thank you. Actually, Ms. Scott has more to report than I do. I may have very little to say, hopefully, so.
Well, it looks like we're working on calling as we speak. Mhm.
Elliot, this is Jim Nolan with Mitchell County. Are you ready? Yeah. We just give you a call so you can hear what's going on and chime in when you have anything, okay?
Great, yeah, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or kind of give some background on whatever you all need or request, so.
Sounds good.
This is Peter Nicolason. We have, Ms. Scott, your June 13th letter pertaining to the Blair Lane Special Improvement Service District. And we have your July 1st, 2024 court status update. I've reviewed those. I believe the commission has had an opportunity to review those. But I think it would be helpful if you could, someone would give us and the public just enough why you're here.
Sure, happy to. So my name's Aaliyah Scott. I work at Williams Porter Danville. I'm attorney there, and I have represented the Wardwell Water and Sewer District since 2018. And during those years, we've gone through some different iterations of the relative board. And during the time period of 2021, the residents of Blair Lane, which is this dirt road out there in the unincorporated territory of Natrona County that sits within the Wardwell Water and Sewer District, that road had just deteriorated to a point of no return, really. Like even the UPS and the FedEx wouldn't deliver there anymore, and we had a number of residents coming to our meetings asking for us to fix the road and to help with it. So I looked into it, and it turns out that those roads out there are technically deeded to the public. I believe the intention a long time ago was that they would become kind of subdivisions or HOAs and have their own dues and fees that would go towards repairing those roads and kind of keeping up with maintenance. And that never happened. So, which led to those roads being in disrepair. And at the time, the board felt like it would be a good use of time and money to help the residents out there with those roads. And under the authority of the Water and Sewer District, we were able to form a special local improvement service district just for that road. And it was kind of a test project with the thought that we might be able to, for all the roads out there, or kind of figure out a way to help maintain that infrastructure, since it does also hold some water lines. We just started with Blair Lane. Boardwell funded the entirety of the road project, and because we paid for it initially, we were able to get like reimbursement partial grant from Natrona County, and that lessened the amount that was to later be assessed on the property owners out there. So all being told, after we got that grant, each lot owes about $900 for the road repair project. And that is assessed over a period of 5 years. So lot owners have the option of when to pay and how much to pay. As long as the amount is paid within the 5-year period, then there's no risk of a lien or anything like that being placed on their property. The 5-year period expires on June 14th of 2020, so we still have a bit of time. Which leads to kind of my next topic of discussion, which is the Water District Board voted almost a year ago to dissolve, and that the district operations and provision of utilities would be taken over by the town of Bar None. And we've been working towards that. We're very close to being finished with the dissolution. Bar None has taken over entire operation of the system since March, maybe a little bit before that, of last year, basically. And so we're looking towards dissolution probably within the next 2 weeks becoming finalized, which will be the end of it. And really the only kind of last remaining piece of asset or anything that the Wardwell Water and Sewage District owns and operates is this Blair Lane Special Service District. The nuances of the municipality statutes do not allow for the town of Bar None to take over operation of a special improvement district, especially because it's outside of its jurisdiction, which leads to my request before the county commissioners of Natrona County to take over, really just oversight and potential collection on the outstanding amounts owed to the service improvement district, and then to do whatever they see fit or would want to do it after the assessment period has closed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holscher, do you want to chime in, or
I really have nothing to add to that. Ms. Scott has summarized it perfectly.
Commissioner North?
Good to see you. It's better for me on this side than it is on the other side. But how far down is Bar None actually incorporated? Does it go all the way down to the come and go, or does it stop short of that, or where exactly is that?
Can you speak into the
I'm
microphone
sorry.
a little bit?
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's better.
So to go back over that, Bar None does not go this south, or that far south presently, and Blair Lane is actually outside of Bar None's growth boundary in any event.
Where does the growth boundary end, and where isn't the city of Casper's growth boundary in
Don't-
that area?
Doan Lane is the edge of None's growth boundary, which is to the south of where the town is presently, but it's not as far as Blair Lane.
It looks like it's that Blair Lane is one road south of Doan Lane.
It's pretty close.
And then Forbes Road is the one south of Blair Lane. Okay.
So that's Casper directly south of there.
That is an unincorporated area of Natrona County.
Right.
It is within Casper's growth boundary. As far as I'm aware, I don't want to speak for the city of Casper, but I don't believe that there's any present plans on the part of Casper to annex into there.
And that's kind of a long way from Casper,
It is.
and it's a lot closer to Bar None,
It is.
especially now.
True. And it always has been, actually, because the southern boundary of Bar None has always been where it presently exists from the very moment of its incorporation.
I've always wondered just exactly who drew those boundaries as far as when they, I mean, I'm not blaming anybody. That's a question. It's like who actually put that stuff out there and how did they come up with some of the locations that they did? Because I know some of the ones that I've seen are kind of questionable, but
I would note on that, that during this entire process, Bar None was in touch with the city of Casper as well as Natrona County. But the city of Casper is, I don't know if I want to say very protective of its growth boundary, but the municipalities have an agreement that in no way would this affect them because Casper does not want its growth boundaries impacted, and Bar None didn't want to give the impression that it was seeking to impact them.
okay, with that being said, there are other areas out there that are unincorporated in the county that are similar situations.
There are indeed.
And where does this stop?
Where does what stop, I guess?
You're wanting the county to take over,
Well,
so
oh, I understand. So here's the problem. The way I would summarize it, and I probably shouldn't speak for Wardwell, but I think Wardwell's concern is that it took this obligation under its wing for these particular set of residents and also for its own purposes to help provide water to them. Bar None itself is really not asking for anything. We cannot undertake the duty because we have no legal ability to do it, because we can only have a special district for road purposes within the incorporated municipality. It's different for water service because it's a different set of statutes. But Bar None cannot undertake this. Wardwell is in the position of basically seeking to have the county assume it, or, and again, you can speak to Ms. Scott on this, or it will basically be abandoned. But Bar None is, we agree with Wardwell's position here, but we're not really asking the county to do anything.
Well, I think to Commissioner North's point, we've heard a lot from the Allendale residents. We've heard from Midwest Heights individuals. I think that we, as a county, need to be mindful of establishing a precedent and what the implications are for us, both fiscally and in terms of, who's actually going to do the work and, on and on and on. So I think that is a concern. My one additional concern is I don't remember this being brought up to the commission when we talked about consenting to the Wardwell dissolution. Perhaps I forgot, But I certainly, I know we weren't diving into the details, if we did. Commissioner North?
Mr. Chairman, that's the reason why I asked if we could have Paul Bertolio come today also, because regional was involved in all these conversations, and there was a lot of stuff that went back and forth, and since he's the chairman of that, I think he could answer a lot of those questions that regional discussed before, while all this was going in.
Mr. Former Chairman, present candidate Bertolio, would you mind coming up and perhaps giving us a little color from Regional Water's perspective?
He's still current chairman of regional.
Well, and current,
It looks like you got him off the golf course too. You know.
so,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, I was actually going to go there, but
but thanks for coming in.
Oh, you-
So yeah,
sure.
you've been listening to the conversation, and if you can fill us in a little bit, that'd be helpful.
sure. So when in the course of this road, there was actually, Aaliyah probably, if I recall correctly, they replaced the water line in conjunction with this. And the road was so bad, nobody would go in there and work on the road because the water line was so close to the surface. And so there was a grave concern, whoever just simply went in and did the road was probably going to hit the water line. So the Wardwell Water and Sewer District really did not do road maintenance, even though the road in essence was their right of way through which the water line was laid. Regional, when the dissolution was coming forward, this was one of our concerns, is who's going to handle some of these in the unincorporated area, because bar none obviously was in it for the water and sewer, and there were road issues out there. There were, speaking as a former commissioner, there was permitting issues, inspection issues, all those things that needed to be addressed. And from the regional standpoint, we were just simply looking at the dissolution of the water and who was going to deliver those services. Bar none is taking over delivering the services for water and sewer, but the road was never addressed, as well as all the way some of the issues as it relates to the distribution of water and sewer collection to the south of the bypass.
Ms. Scott indicated that this is the recommended option, the only viable option. Ms. Scott or Chairman Bertolio or Mr. Holscher, what are the other options? I have some ideas, but I thought I'd at least like to know whether they're viable or not viable. I mean, it seems like one would be that the folks out there move forward with the original plan of establishing an HOA that has assessments and they manage it themselves.
Mr. Chairman, that is essentially the only viable option that I have really thought of as well. Just as a little bit of background, the residents of Blair Lane did attempt to establish an improvement service district, I believe in 2011, and it just never got off the ground. So it's technically still on the books with the county, but they just didn't generate any funding. So they didn't have the ability to pursue maintenance on their road, and it just kind of became defunct after that. I could see, rallying the property owners out on Blair Lane who are motivated and organized to essentially take over the management of the improvement service district and just form a board and follow the required meetings provided by statute for the time period, and then allow them to do whatever they want after that. And I'd be more than happy to assist them with that. Just with my experience from the initial project out there just aren't that many people who I think would be able to be organized to do that. I'm not willing to try. I just don't know how successful it's going to be. And part of the reason that I'm concerned about the, longevity of this project and having somebody take it over is that there is an outstanding assessment owed by the vast majority of the lots out there, but certain lot owners have paid in full or have made payments. And just from a kind of equitable standpoint, if this just dies because we can't really get people motivated to take it over, or it's not appropriate for the county to take over, then the individuals that have not paid their assessment could potentially not have to pay their assessment because there would be no assessment power to levy come the passing of the deadline. And I just feel like that is not a good outcome for the owners that have paid.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate that there are some folks that either can't or won't pay under probably any circumstances. One of the concerns I have is the county not only having potential liability for screwing up that water line, if we go have a road and bridge department folks go get Western with that road, but it's also us potentially having to pursue our remedies. Maybe it's, I don't know what those remedies might be for collection of those assessments, of those monies. Anything from, regular old assessments to litigation. And we're kind of concerned, I think some of us are concerned about the implications for the county in doing this. And one thing I don't think we have any concept on is our advice from our staff, specifically Mr. Hagler and Road and Bridge. I have talked to him about this, but I don't have kind of any kind of estimates on what it might cost to take care of this. And once it becomes our baby, I'm not sure how easy it's going to be to allow it to spread its wings and fly out of our nest in 5 years. Commissioner Mill.
Yeah, so since we got all three of you here and our legal, so if it becomes our decision, this board's decision, not to do this, not to take this over, what other options do you have? What's the plans to move forward? Whoever wants to answer that.
This is Ms. Scott. My only plan would to be recontact all of the property owners on Blair Lane and ask them to submit a letter of interest to forming a board to manage the Improvement Service District at least until June 14th of 2028 with me as the counsel for the board. And if we get interest, then just kind of pursue it that way. If we get no interest, then I think it just dissolves.
I think one other option that we haven't talked about, and Mr. Holscher alluded to the fact that I believe it's water and sewer services can be provided outside a municipal or a town's boundaries. Right?
That's correct.
Under one set of statutes. In Wyoming, it's unique that we know basically all the legislators, and it's not too difficult to get statutory changes made. My thinking is that someone, or we could get in touch with our legislative delegation or Wyoming County Commissioners Association and point out the fact that it's allowed in the water and sewer context, but not in the road context, and at least to give flexibility to communities like Bar None to be able to work on roads in addition to the water and sewer. And I know that there may be some pluses and minuses for Bar None in this specific example. But it could be at least an option to pursue.
Commissioner, we would note on that, if a statute was changed, a significant difference, of course, is that water, has the enterprise fund aspect to it, and a municipality would have to have some way, presumably through an assessment, to recover its cost. And the other thing here is that bar none has made agreements with Casper, Natrona County, as well as regional, about not trespassing on their respective rights and future rights. Again, this is actually unincorporated area of Natrona County, but it's within Casper's growth boundary. When you start paving in someone else's growth boundary, it raises some questions about what your intention is.
Yeah, thank you. I do recognize that the city in particular has been reluctant to adjust growth boundaries, and we understand why that's typically the case, but I think there could be a compelling case in this instance, but I don't know. The only other thought I had was whether there'd be a Wyoming Water Development Commission grant for redoing that water line so that it's buried or put in the borrow ditch, buried deeper or put in the borrow ditch. And if that were available, then maybe a community or the county or the homeowners might find it a little more attractive and not necessarily as fraught with complexities.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chairman, they did replace the water line. That was part of the big project. They did replace the water line and redo the road at the same time. So they buried that water line deeper so that what happened was like most of the roads, they just keep putting more dirt on top, and it just eventually made huge craters. So the water line did get replaced.
And it was replaced at the proper depth?
Yes.
And so it's just erosion and...
Well, right now it's in great shape. The whole thing's in great shape. What precipitated not working on the roads was the fact that the water line was there and it needed to be replaced. And they came to regional asking for financing for that. And I think Aaliyah got grant money from someplace else. She's there.
Yeah, so Mr. Commissioner, I can kind of allude to that. It was actually a two-step project. So Wardwell needed to replace the water line, and we wanted to just do the road at the same time, but because of the insistent nature of the residents on Blair Lane that kept coming to all of our meetings and really complaining about the road, we gave them two options. We could form this improvement service district and do the road, and then the next summer we were going to rip it up again and replace the water line. And we thought, just wait 1 year and we'll do the road and the water line at the same time. And they wanted to move forward with the road. We had a public hearing about it. I believe it was even in 2019. And so we went forward with just doing the road under this improvement service district, which is where I got the 50% grant funding. And then the next summer, we did the water line and redid the road again.
And Mr. Nicolason, I would just note that on this particular road, as it's been mentioned, there actually was a special district form prior to this. Wardwell managed to actually get it organized when they went ahead. So there are some structures there, actually two structures, legal structures, should the residents be able to be brought together in some fashion to continue on with the road maintenance in the area.
Other questions, Commissioner Laird?
So is the main issue the road maintenance?
Well, what the main issue is the recoupment of the cost of putting the road in. And I shouldn't really speak for Wardwell on that, but that's a significant issue, is that they paid to put the road in, and that cost has not all been recouped at this time.
So they want us to be collection agents for them against certain people who may not have the money. Is that, so I'm hearing there's no real water problem here.
I believe that
And
the
no
water
real road
problem's
problem.
solved.
Bertoldo was shaking his head to that because I was confused there too. And I know we have different road problems around the county where they're not county roads. And we were discussing that earlier. But I think it's cleared my mind that I just don't think that right now my view would be that we need to really think this over, because if it was a water problem, that's one thing. If it's a road problem, for me, it's another thing, because I don't know that we really have a good policy on how we're going to do some of these roads that really are in terrible shape. And now I hear that this one isn't in terrible shape, so
Oh, it's mostly recoupment of cost of
Yeah,
the improvement of the road is what the
I like to leave
issue
that to
is.
the people themselves from my own personal standpoint, but thank you very much.
Commissioner North?
I guess my question right now is that with the state requirements for improvement service districts and all the training that you have to go through now, all their officers, do they actually have that in place?
They do not have that in
And
place.
so if that's the case, they're in violation already,
And let-
could be dissolved accordingly by the state.
Well, let me be clear too, because I may be confusing too. So the original improvement and service district, that was the Blair Lane Improvement and Service District, it basically never got off the ground. I mean, I don't know if they had more than a couple meetings. They never got anything accomplished. And that's why Wardwell came in with this special district. I do not wish to suggest that Wardwell's special district was non-compliant. You'd have to, get more information from Ms. Scott on that. But the original improvement and service district is basically an orphan. I mean, I don't think it has any officers. I don't think it has anything.
Okay.
That's correct. The original, and at the time that I formed the special Blair Lane Improvement Service District as essentially a child of Wardwell, we were in compliance because the board members of that special district were the board members of Wardwell. And I did not realize that the 10 plus years ago, the residents of Blair Lane had attempted to do it on its own. It only came up a few years after the formation, when the treasurer and some other people were very confused at the county, and then we sorted it all out. But the original attempt by the residents, there wasn't even anything on file with the elections department about who had kind of been those original persons. So if I were to embark on contacting the residents, it would just kind of be blind and to see who was interested. I mean, I could kind of pinpoint who's already paid and maybe light a fire under them to get their neighbors to pay. But so at this point, it's mainly that there is an outstanding amount owed, and it technically could be paid to bar none once collected. And the maintenance aspect of it is totally voluntary. There's a 5-year period within which maintenance can be done and assessed under the same assessment as the initial project, but thus far we have not done any maintenance, and no maintenance was promised. It was just to fix it and then see kind of where things went.
Commissioner Friel?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the question that I have is that we've talked about it being within Casper's growth boundary itself, but Casper's not part of this conversation. Has anybody talked to Casper to see where they stand on this?
We have not. The city of Bar None or town of Bar None is not.
Ms. Scott?
I have not either. I mean, I think the same kind of intricacies relate to municipalities being able to take over improvement service districts versus first-class cities. And I just felt since the road is in the unincorporated territory of the county that was my first logical request.
In fact, the city of Casper would have the same legal problem that the town of Bar None does, because there's just no legal ability for a municipality to be working on or associated with roads and streets that are outside of its municipal boundaries.
Commissioner North.
We have a lot of private roads with public access in this county. A lot of them. And a lot of them have public water systems running right down the middle of them. So, I understand kind of where Barnum's coming from, but at the same time, if those funds weren't collected, that would be, my understanding is that would be a debt that Barnum assumed from Wardwell during the dissolution process.
It would be an assumed debt. It may very well be an assumed debt that would be uncollectible, perhaps. But I don't want to leave the impression that it would be a titanic problem for the town of Bar None. In fact, that's probably why this has gotten to you at this point. But that would be the case. I mean, it's money spent. Wardwell spent the money. They are dissolving. Bar None has already taken over the operations of the system. And this is kind of the one last remaining issue that's out there. And because it is the last remaining issue, it's one that neither Wardwell nor Bar None could, in good faith, just simply ignore without bringing to your attention.
I appreciate that, but I don't see where the county can do anything about it because we have difficulty maintaining the roads we have right now, and they're county roads. And this is a private road with public access or public road with public access. So, but
The other thing on my mind is that we probably ought to confer with our legal counsel. I think we might want to confer with some of our other departments too, whether it's planning or road and bridge, before we make a decision. But I think you've heard some hesitation on our part for the reasons that I think some of us have mentioned today. Commissioners, is there anything else on this side of the table? Anything else, Ms. Scott or gentlemen, you'd like to, advise us of or have us consider?
Not from us.
Nothing from me, Commissioner, and I just appreciate your time, and I recognize the large ask that I presented before you in my request. I'm always of the opinion, if you don't ask, you don't know. So I totally understand and echo the hesitations. It's just one of those complexities that at the end of the day, it might just have to, die and be forgotten, and that is just how it is sometimes. So I understand. I just appreciate you guys considering my request.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple quick thoughts. This doesn't really affect Wardwell's dissolution because it's a debt that is owed them and not the other way around. So they're leaving this debt free. The improvement district, I don't believe, can dissolve with a debt owed. So I question whether or not they can simply dissolve. That being said, that debt could be, as a lot of improvements are handled, put on their tax roll, where once it gets set up, that is actually goes to the property and is collected at the time of property tax, and then it could be dispersed back to Bar None, who technically has absorbed all of Wardwell's assets. If it may allow you to allow or to dissolve the district and at the same time satisfy the collection, is almost like a lien on the property, and let it go, voluntarily go on their property taxes until such time as it's satisfied.
And just to harken on that a little bit, that was my initial attempt and thought at the easiest way to collect this. And I have to look back through my emails, but there's a weird nuance with how the special district was formed that was not going to allow for the tax roll option, which is why we went to assessing it from the Wardwell district onto the customers and the property lot owners. But maybe we can take a second look at that and see if there was something else that the treasurer might be able to facilitate via the tax roll option.
Well, we're over time, but Commissioner Friel had one more question.
No, the only question I was going to ask is kind of down the road of liens. If it's not satisfied by the time it's supposed to be, could it not be attached as a lien to the property, and then when it's sold, then it would be satisfied? That may be 1 year from now, maybe 50 years from now, but it could be satisfied at that time.
Well, because these are a special creature, it's really not clear. Ms. Scott took a look at it, and I also did. I think from bar none's perspective, I mean, we have no direct ability to do anything. Whether Wardwell can somehow attach it, I'm not entirely certain, but I have some skepticism that it can be done. These are actually different than the more conventional improvement and service district, in which case, you can definitely assess that way. And that's why, actually, in this case, this special district has sought the payment of this matter directly from the property owners, as opposed to seeking to impose tax on the property itself.
So real quick, her statement that the officers of the special district are the officers of the Wardwell, can't those officers acting as a special district put that lien on, then that would transfer to Wardwell to bar none?
They can, assuming that the special district can assess a lien or can impose a lien. So if they can impose a lien, then that could be done.
That would be a heck of an option right there.
It would be if it can be done. It's just not clear if it can be done.
It's definitely a viable option. The only problem is that it can only happen after June 14th of 2028. Because the lot owners have until that date to pay in full.
And by that time, the board will have this pretty far in its rearview mirror, so.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Scott. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Beth.
The next item is the Commissioner Roundtable discussion. We have a little time, not a lot, and I keep looking up at the clock on the wall, and it keeps messing with me. So we have about 9 minutes before we need to have our special meeting. I have something I'd like to just bring up briefly, and that is we got notice from the Industrial Siting Division of the Settler Wind Farm, which is proposed to be basically contiguous with the Pioneer Wind Farm, as I understand it. 150 megawatts, was it 40 turbines, up to 40 turbines? We have kind of an accelerated timeframe for participation in that. Commissioners, I think my question is, there is an existing wind farm up there. That was a pretty controversial one back in 2011 or so. Do we want to engage with the public on this? We could not, and we could just participate on the cost, the impact funds side of things. We could provide some sort of notice and opportunity for the public to be heard. If we're going to do that, we'd want to get it on a commission meeting schedule sooner rather than later. Commissioner North?
Because this is in Converse County and their commissioners are the ones that are gonna have the vote on it and not us. I don't have any problem with having the public comment come in here and let us know what they think, but I think what we need to do is pursue the economic
The impact
side of
funds.
impact, yeah. Just because we don't have any say over it. So that's the only reason why I say that.
Well, I do agree, and we will participate on the economic impact assistance funds through the industrial siding division. And I know our county attorney is going to be working with our various departments to get their thoughts on impacts, and I assume work with the county, work with the city. But I do know that statutorily, we could comment on impacts on siding. And I know that many of our citizens of Natrona County do recreate in that area along Mormon Canyon Road and the Box Elder Canyon, Duncan Ranch, kind of in that general area. So I'm fine with just allowing the public to come in and talk to us at the end of our meetings during those public comment periods, but I did want to just ask the question. Commissioner Mill?
Yes, I'd agree that, we enjoy hearing from the folks during public comment, as this is not a Natrona project. And my understanding, the majority of this, of the wind farm is going to be on private, if not all. Yeah, come in, I'd say, people come in, give their opinion. They also have a chance to talk at the siting and let that commission know what they feel like. But as far as us holding a specific hearing or anything for it, I don't think we really have
Any need?
For it.
Commissioner North, did you have anything else?
Right along with that, if they want to give us something, we can always forward that documentation on, as a benefit to our citizens to the industrial siding. I'm not saying that we neglect our citizens by ignoring them. I'm just saying that as a commission, I don't think we need to. I think there's other avenues that they have to get their expression out there.
Heather, do you need any guidance from us on that, or do you kind of know the routine with the different ones that we've done over the years?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So I've been involved with a few of these. We have to request party status, I think, by August 28th. And then there's already been some communication between the municipalities about working on an MOU as quickly as possible. So
Very good. Yeah, I know there will be some impacts, and I would suspect that there'll be significantly more than the Cedar Springs because of the proximity to Natrona County and the city of Casper and Evansville. Anything else on that particular issue?
I have a light on. I am, Mr. Chairman, I would like to have public comment on this. You can always learn something when the public comes in here that you never thought about, so I'm always appreciative of public comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? For now, we will just hope that the public lets us know of their concerns via our meetings at the end of the meetings or through written communications, phone calls. And if we change our opinion and set up an actual time at a subsequent meeting, I think we've got a little time left to do that. So for now, I think we'll just expect the public to contact us with any concerns of Natrona County and our citizens. For Commissioner Roundtable, do any commissioners have pressing items? We'll do it a little different that you want to bring to our attention. Commissioner Frio.
Just one thing, I would like to get with Natrona County Collective Health Trust, and obviously they've done a purchase of a building here in town, but I also see that there's temporary construction fences gone up around it. So I'm just curious, it looks like there's a complete remodel taking place of that building. I'm curious as to the amount of money that's being placed into that building.
Commissioner North.
I'll make it quick. We did have last week, the shooting complex committee did eliminate Casper, or Central Wyoming from that location. I think we put on a very good product and presentation. One of the differences that I know of is that personally, I wanted this area to have to use a outside contractor from the private sector to operate it because costs would be substantially less. Both Cody and Gillette, we're going to turn it all straight over to the state and have them operate the entire thing. It's just a difference in doing things, and I don't know. They said that the reason why they didn't choose Casper was because they didn't particularly like our location. So that was the reason why they gave us. Disappointing, but I just want to share that information.
Thank you. We have a minute left. Any other matters? Very good. So we will conclude our work session, and then we'll start up with our special meeting. Here we go. I found the agenda. We're here for the Natrona County Board of County Commissioners special meeting, Monday, July 2nd, 2024, 3 p.m. The meeting's been called to order. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Frill,
Here.
Commissioner Laird,
Present.
Commissioner Milne,
Here.
Commissioner North,
Here.
Chairman Nicolason.
Here. I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So
pursuant
moved.
to Wyoming Statute 164405. Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Friel, seconded by Commissioner Milne. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're in executive session. Thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn executive session?
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Friel, seconded by Commissioner Laird. All in favor?
Aye.
We're out of executive session. It's what?
We already did that.
We already did that. We were ending the special meeting.
What do you mean in the meeting?
Make a motion
Motion
to,
to adjourn special meetings.
yes.
Seconded.
That, okay, so I thought we already did it, but, okay. It's been moved to adjourn the special meeting by Commissioner Friel, seconded by Commissioner Milne. Any